The Girls Who Laugh Backward, Part 1. Chapter 1. The Playground. When I heard the girl for the first time, I had been awake for almost 19 hours. That matters because later exhaustion served as an explanation, not only for other people, mostly for me. I had finished my night shift at 6, but I stayed at the hotel for almost another hour because a guest from room 308 claimed his wife had disappeared. His wife was sitting in the lobby the whole time, 3 meters away from him, drinking tea. He hadn't recognized her because she was wearing glasses that morning. People are worse at recognizing one another than they think. The man didn't apologize to his wife. He only said, "You don't usually wear glasses." She put down her cup and replied, "For 12 years. Then they walked to the elevator together. I watched them go and thought that maybe relationships consisted of exactly that. Misrecognizing the same person for long enough that it came to count as familiarity. Nika already had her jacket on. She stood behind reception, pulled the zipper up with her teeth and looked at me. "You're thinking something mean again without saying it." "I always think without saying it. You can still tell when it's mean." She picked up her bag from the floor. On the front was a white rabbit holding a knife. Nika owned several bags with violent animals on them. Once I'd asked whether that meant something. She'd said, "Yes." "Nothing more." "Coming?" she asked. "In a minute." "Your shift is over." "I know." "Your face doesn't." She stepped closer and examined me. Nika didn't examine people discreetly. When she looked at someone, it seemed as if she were trying to identify damage. "You're gray," she said. "The light in here is gray." "No, you." "Thanks." "Get some sleep." "That's the plan." "You always have plans you don't follow." "That's called planning." She grinned, raised 2 fingers in farewell, and left. I waited until the entrance door closed behind her. Then I checked the key box one more time, even though the morning shift had already arrived. The morning shift was called Mr. Mertens, wore a different tie for every day of the week, and treated the key to room 214 as if it were radioactive. "You can go, Miss Kern," he said. "I know. You're still standing there." "I know that too." Mr. Mertens looked at his watch. He had a narrow, shiny forehead and a habit of blinking while he spoke, as if his own sentences were dazzling him. "Did something happen?" "A man didn't recognize his wife." "At the hotel?" "In his life, I think." Mr. Mertens looked at me. I picked up my bag. Outside it was already warm. The air above the street had that early brightness that didn't feel fresh but used up. Delivery vans stood double parked. A man sprayed the pavement in front of a cafe with a hose. The water gathered gray between the paving stones and carried cigarette butts toward the drain. I like Berlin in the morning. The city didn't look better then, but it looked more honest. At night, every lit window could promise something. In the morning, you saw the garbage bags underneath. Normally, I went straight home from Ostbahnhof. That morning, I got off one stop early. I didn't know why. Maybe I briefly closed my eyes while sitting down and startled awake when the tram braked. Maybe I wanted to buy milk. Maybe I simply didn't want to be in my apartment yet. Later I tried to remember the exact reason. There wasn't one. That disturbed me more than the girl. I got off the tram and stood there for a moment until it moved on. Behind the window sat people with coffee cups, headphones, and faces that already looked tired of the day. Across the street was a small supermarket. I bought a bottle of milk, even though there was still half a bottle in my refrigerator at home. At the checkout sat a young woman with false eyelashes. The man in front of me put 4 cans of beer, a frozen pizza, and a bunch of radishes on the belt. The radishes made the purchase sad. "Payback?" the cashier asked. The man shook his head. "Receipt?" He shook his head again. She looked at me. I put the milk on the belt. "Just that?" "Yes." She ran the bottle over the scanner. $1.29. I paid the exact amount. "Receipt?" "No." Outside I held the cold bottle against my forearm. It was too warm for that time of day. I didn't take the direct route home but walked through a small park between two rows of buildings. The park consisted of a lawn, 3 benches, a sandbox, and a playground whose ground was covered with red rubber tiles. In the middle stood a metal climbing frame. Beside it, 2 swings. The girl was sitting on one of them. The first thing I noticed was the jacket. It was red and too thick for the weather. The girl wore it zipped shut. The sleeves reached down over her hands. Her hair was light brown and hung straight to her shoulders. She wasn't swinging, she just sat there holding the chains. A woman sat on a bench at the edge of the playground, looking at her phone. Beside her stood a stroller. A boy knelt in the sand and hit a bucket with a plastic shovel. Everything was normal. Then the girl laughed. I stopped. It wasn't loud laughter. No shriek, no giggle carrying through the whole park. It was a small, bright child's laugh, only in the wrong order. I heard the ending first. A soft, exhausted exhale like the breath after a long laugh. Then came the bright notes, separate from one another, slowly at first, then faster. At the very end, the girl drew in a sharp breath. It sounded as if someone had played a recording backward. I looked toward the bench. The woman was still looking at her phone. The boy kept hitting the bucket. The girl laughed again. Again it began with the ending. I put the milk bottle on the ground. Maybe another child had laughed. Maybe the sound came from an open window. Maybe I was more tired than I thought. The girl raised her head. She looked at me. Children often stare at adults because they haven't fully learned the rules of politeness yet. Later they're trained out of it. Then they look only briefly, decide whether someone is dangerous, ridiculous, or irrelevant, and look away. This girl didn't look away. Her face was narrow. Maybe she was 8, maybe 9. Her eyes were very pale, gray or blue, and there was a small dark mark beneath her left ear. At first I thought it was dirt. Then she smiled. Wait for part 2.